Welcome to Faithful Fridays, a podcast for women who are seeking God and want to grow in obedience to His Word. I'm your host, Bobbie, and this is the place where pleasing God is the goal, no matter where you're at in life. Welcome back to Faithful Fridays. I did have a little mix-up last week. At the end of Jehovah Rapha, I said we would be back this week with Jehovah Nissi, and that is not true. Today we are doing Jehovah Shalom. So please excuse that mix-up. That was my bad. I do apologize. So last week we talked about Jehovah Rapha, the Lord who heals. And we saw that God doesn't just give relief, but He actually heals what's broken. Now, after something is healed, it still needs to be made whole again, right? Think about it like this. Someone breaks their leg, right? You go to the doctor sets it heals, then the cast comes off. But after the cast comes off, the leg that was broke is still weak, stiff, really. And it's not working the way that it should or the way that it was before. It may look healed on the outside, but on the inside, it's not whole yet. And the same can be with us. Healing fixes what was damaged, but peace restores us back into right order with God. Romans 5:1 says, "Therefore, being justified by faith, we have peace with God through our Lord Jesus Christ." And that's where we're going this week with Jehovah Shalom. The Lord is peace. Now, when we hear peace, we have to be careful not to think about it in the way that the world does. I know, I can hear somebody saying, "Well, Bobbie, what do you mean by that? Peace is peace. It's only one kind of peace, and it comes from God." And if you told me that, I would absolutely agree with you. But here's the thing. Just because something absolutely comes from God doesn't mean that we've absolutely been understanding it the right way. A lot of times what we're calling peace is not really peace. It's just comfort. And comfort will keep us in place. It'll have us avoiding hard things, ignoring what God said, and choosing what feels good over what's actually right. Now, if you hear kitty meowing, you have to excuse my Luna girl, okay? Because she is wanting to get in this room so terribly bad. But the door is closed, and I'm not getting up to open it, so she will just have to wait. Anyway, comfort will tell us to stay here. Don't even deal with that. Don't worry about it. Don't change nothing. Right? But peace will move us in obedience. Now, if you ask me why, I'm going to tell you. Because real peace comes from being in alignment with God. Not from everything around us feeling good. Just like our broke leg. Our broke leg is completely healed whenever it has aligned in the bones that it needs to align with. Jehovah Shalom shows us that God is the one who brings things back into order in the way that they're supposed to be. Now we see this in Judges chapter 6. And if you haven't read this account with Gideon, let me give you a quick rundown. Israel had done evil in the sight of God, and because of that, He allowed the Midianites to mistreat them. Now, the Midianites were just a bunch of bullies, right? They would come in and take their food, destroy their crops, and really just leave them trying to survive. So by the time that we meet Gideon, he is in no way bold and confident. He is hiding and working with wheat in a place where nobody could see him. But I don't want to just label him as scared, right? Gideon was a man who had been living under pressure, and he was just trying to survive. But more than that, he doesn't fully understand God yet. And we know that because in one part of this account, he says, if the Lord is with us, why is all of this happening? And what makes that so interesting is God had just told him that he was with him. And Gideon still questioned it. Now, I've had those same words come out of my mouth. Lord, if you are with me, why does this feel like this? And before I say anything else, I have to throw this in there because it popped in my head, okay? This made me think about Job's friends. Because his friends looked at what Job was going through and automatically assumed that something had to be wrong between him and God. They thought that his suffering meant God was against him. Now, God later made that clear that they were wrong, but my point is they spoke on something that they didn't understand. And sometimes we can do the same thing. We can look at what we're going through and start thinking, God must not be with me. I must have done something that is out of obedience to God. But hard doesn't always mean that God is absent. Now, I do apologize for my brain. If you know me, then you know that my brain chases breadcrumbs whenever I read and talk about the Bible, but I can't help it. That's my study style. Back to Gideon. The angel of the Lord is speaking with Gideon, and he calls him a mighty warrior. But at this moment, mighty warrior where, right? Gideon is not acting like a mighty warrior. He's hiding and questioning and thinks that the Lord has abandoned them. But God called Gideon based on what he was going to do through him, not what Gideon looked like in that moment. Now, the Bible goes on to say that Gideon wanted to prepare an offering, and he asked the angel of the Lord not to leave until he returned. And the Lord said, I will wait until you return. And when Gideon came back, he was still there. Once again, I do apologize for my brain. But there was once a time in my life where I was living outside of God. And I'm in no ways proud of that. But I am so thankful that he allowed me to return to him. And I'm so thankful that whenever I decided to come back, he was standing right there where I left him. Gideon brings the offering, and the angel of the Lord touches it, and fire consumes it. And then, poof, he's gone. And right then is when Gideon realizes who he's been talking to. And in Gideon's understanding, seeing God face to face meant death. So he probably thought, oh my goodness, am I dead? And then the Lord tells him, peace be unto thee. Fear not, thou shalt not die. And in that moment, something shifts. Not a lot, but enough for Gideon to see God differently. Enough to calm his fear. Enough to take the next step forward. Gideon didn't fully understand God, but he still obeyed him. And as he obeyed, God revealed more of who he was. And then Gideon builds an altar and calls it Jehovah Shalom. Because in that moment, God corrected what Gideon thought about him. He got aligned with God. Because he thought that he would die, and God showed him mercy. Gideon thought God might be against him, but God showed him that he was actually with him. So Gideon marked that moment. He built that altar as a reminder, this is who God is. And I want us to notice this because he built that altar before everything was finally over. Midians were still there. The problem was still there, and the battle was still coming. But Gideon stopped and honored God in the middle of it. And that's so very important because sometimes we want to wait until everything is fixed and all better before we worship, before we trust God, or before we acknowledge what God is doing. We can be feeling terrible, absolutely terrible about something, going through so much stuff, and we won't go to worship. We won't pray. We want to wait until we feel better to worship or to pray. It shouldn't be that way. We don't wait until everything looks peaceful to come to God. We come to him because he is peace. Before I came to Christ, I didn't really know God like I thought I did. But the problem wasn't that I didn't know about God. I mean, who doesn't know about God? He's God, right? The problem was that I didn't fully understand who he is, how he works, or where I stood with him. And if I'm being honest, there are areas even now where I'm still growing in truly understanding who he is. Hello, welcome to season 2, The Names of God. I honestly did not know that there were so many names of God. Had no idea. So as I present these names to you in the way that I'm understanding them, I'm learning these names also. Each week is something new for me too. So even this week, Gideon is not some far off Bible character that I can't relate to, because he shows me what it looks like when I don't fully understand who God is yet. And now that I've been working on actually aligning myself with God, I have a level of peace right now that I never had before in my life, and I absolutely love it. I don't know if you've ever heard the phrase, I love it here. I really do. I love it here because I've lived this peace. Let me tell you a true story. A couple of months ago, I had shingles, but it wasn't regular shingles, right? I had shingles in my eye. Now, I really didn't know how to take the information that I had whenever I had it, right? But in the moment, when I found out what it was, I did not wait. I went straight to God because I knew shingles was painful. I've known people who've had it before, and they told me that it was a very painful experience. But I never knew anybody who ever had shingles in their eye. So already it's a whole different level, right? And I'm going to tell you straight forward, straight honest, it hurt like the dickens, okay? But I kept praying. I kept studying the best that I could. I only had one eye that fully functioned, and even sometimes that didn't even function properly because I don't know how to explain it, but when one of them goes, the other one doesn't really work too good. I don't know if it's because you're straining to put all the work on one, and I don't know, but I studied the best that I could, and I kept putting out this podcast. I did not miss a week of putting a podcast out. Now, on my last eye doctor appointment, he told me, now let me remind you, the first eye doctor appointment that I had, he said that he had never seen it before in somebody's eye like that. Not that it couldn't happen, but just he's never had an experience with it. So on the last appointment, he told me that it was so bad in the beginning. He did not tell me this in the beginning, but he said that it was so bad in the beginning that he thought that I would have permanent damage of some sort. Because when he looked at my eye, the very first day that I got to him, he said it looked like somebody took oatmeal and just threw it in my eye. But guess what? There was no damage. I have no permanent damage to my eye. And I learned something from that. Because peace is not something that we first feel. Peace shows up when things are in the right place with God. Had I not been aligning myself with God, I don't think He would have been my first thought. It probably would have been fear, maybe even panic, but not peace from God. So starting today, let's discipline ourselves instead of just asking God to give us peace. Maybe we need to start asking, what is out of order in me because I don't feel peace? Because shalom means things being brought back into alignment with God, right? God didn't fix Gideon's situation first. He fixed Gideon's understanding of where he stood with him. And if he did that for Gideon, he will absolutely do the same for us, because God is no respecter of persons. Now here's the hard truth, but we need it. And that is, if we want to be pleasing to God, we're not lacking peace. It's why we don't have peace, because we're out of alignment with God. Philippians 4 tells us not to be anxious about anything. And Colossians 3 verse 15 says, let the peace of Christ rule. Now that peace is meant to govern how we move and how we respond. That's what it means to rule. So the real question isn't, why don't I feel peace? It's, am I walking in alignment with God? Because peace is not something that we chase. It's something that shows up when we obey. So, if Jehovah Shalom is peace, then that means that we align ourselves up with what He said and we do it. Then and only then will we truly have peace. Now that is all I have for today, but I do want to thank you for joining me. If you haven't already, please subscribe to Faithful Fridays. It'll help you not to miss any episodes that are put out. And if you haven't already, please join the page Living Purposely on Facebook. That is the home of Faithful Fridays. And over there, I post daily encouragement to help us stay grounded in God's Word and to keep growing in obedience. Lord willing, I'll be back faithfully next Friday with Jehovah Nissi, the Lord our banner. Jehovah Shalom showed us that real peace comes from being aligned with God. And Jehovah Nissi is going to push us a little deeper to make us ask, whose banner are we really standing under? Because everybody's fighting for something. The question is whether we're fighting under our own name and our own authority, or if we're going to fight under God and His authority. Until then, remember, stay in the Word, stay faithful.